We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Aleph in Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 12a. On the previous summit, the Gemara is discussing Beis Shammai's opinion that the minimum amount for Kiddushin with Kesef is a dinar, and Reish Lakish suggests that the source for Beis Shammai is in line with what Chizkiah says in terms of Eved Ivri, because by Eved Ivri we know the halach is that the Eved Ivri can redeem himself, can go free, and the same is true by an Amo Ivriya. They have to pay back what the master paid for them, but they can deduct the amount of the labor that they've contributed so far, of the years that they've worked. And it's only possible to deduct if you have a payment that was more than a pruta. You can't deduct from a pruta. And so therefore you see that the minimum over there has to be that it's more than a pruta. And that's the source for Beis Shammai as well, that again, the minimum for Kiddushin is going to be a dinar. But then the Gemara suggested, who says maybe what the pasuk means when it talks about an Eved Ivri paying for redemption and subtracting, deducting, that deducting from the amount, that's talking about a situation where the Adon paid more than a pruta. But in a case where the Adon did pay a pruta, so then in such a situation there would be nothing to deduct. So who says that the minimum amount of purchase is a dinar there as well? And so the Gemara now says, Lo salka daitach, don't think that that is the case. And Rashi explains, Lo salka daitoch shetei niknes b'davar she'ein bo gira. Don't think it's possible that an Eved Ivri could be purchased with something like a pruta that you can't deduct from. Me'achar shenichtav geirua kan, because it talks about the fact of deducting, and so therefore it must be that the Eved Ivri is purchased for a dinar in order that it's possible to deduct. And how do we know that? Because dumiyod de yiyud, it's similar to what we find by yiyud. Ma yiyud afagavdi boy miyayid v'i boy lo miyayid. Just like by yiyud, even though you have a situation where it's his choice, if he wants to marry, talking about the Amo Ivriya, if the Adon wants to marry the Amo Ivriya, he could. If he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to. But kol hecha de lo motzi miyayid, but the halacha is, if you have a situation where it's impossible for the Adon to do yiyud, let's say you have a situation where it's impossible for the Adon to marry the Amo Ivriya, and that would be a situation of, let's say, the Amo Ivriya is also usher to him, prohibited him, because she's some kind of erva, it's a kind of arayas. So the halacha is, if it's impossible to do yiyud, lo have is zvina zvine, so the sale is not considered to be a good sale. And the same thing would be true in terms of the idea of deducting when the Eved Ivri is redeeming himself or the Amo Ivri is redeeming herself. Hachanami here also, kol hecha de lo matzi migra, if you have a situation where the amount that was paid for the purchase you can't deduct from it, meaning it's only a pruta, lo have zvina zvini, so that's not going to be considered to be a good sale. And so therefore again we see by Eved Ivri, we see by Amo Ivriya, the minimum amount is a dinar, so that it's possible to deduct in case the Eved or the Amo wants to redeem himself or herself. And so the same is going to be true by Kiddushin, as the Gemara now says, V'kiddushay isha leBeis Shammai, that when it comes to the Kiddushin by a woman, according to Beis Shammai, nafkeluhu me Amo Ivriya, they learn it out from Amo Ivriya. Ma Amo Ivriya bepruta lo mikniya, just like an Amo Ivriya cannot be acquired with a pruta, afisha bepruta lo miktasha, so too when it comes to a woman, you can't have Kiddushin of less than a pruta. And Rashi explains, Dumya de Yid, Ki Hechi do Amar Linyan Yid, just like we say by Yid, Shenichdav Imo Asher Lo Ya'odav, V'lamanu Sharashoy Ha'adon Liyada. The halach is the master is able to marry her, Liyada Lo, Besoch Shnei Amos, while she's a maidservant. V'tiyah Mekudeshas Lo, that's a Kiddushin. Im Yomar Lo Hareat Miyuedis Li, he says to her that you are Miyuedis to me, B'meshi Yesh Li Alecha, V'ein Sarach Kesef Acher. The point over there is, he doesn't need to give Kesef again. It's the original Kesef that was used for the purchase, that can be used for the Kiddushin. V'yomar and so we'll say later on that because of this halacha, her father is not allowed to sell her to a relative, because it has to be someone who he is able to marry. She asur la mishum erva, because that's a problem of erva. Because the only way to have an Amo Ivriya is you have to be at least able in theory to be mekayim asher lo yada v'giru nami ki yud ma'yud afagav. And we're comparing girua to yid. The idea is, just like by the yid, it's not a sale if you can't do yid, so too it's not considered a sale in terms of Eved Ivri, Amo Ivriya. It's not a sale if you can't do giru. If it's not possible to deduct the amount of labor and then redeem himself, then you cannot have, then the sale is not considered to be a sale. V'kiddusha isha maskana de milsa. Now the Gemara now is concluding and saying we learn Kiddushin from Eved Ivri. Maskana de milsa de Reish Lakishi. This is the concluding proof of Reish Lakish, or the concluding words of Reish Lakish. To kamasik v'yomer time of the Beis Shammai kedei Chizkiah, because again Reish Lakish was the one who said that the reasoning of Beis Shammai, it followed Chizkiah. Afisha bepruta lo mikdasha de garminan mikidusha yir. Again, you learn out from Kiddusha yir, just like over there, so too over here, it cannot cannot be done with a pruta. But the Gemara continues, V'ema palga de dinar, but why don't we say that it's a half a dinar? V'ema shte prutos, or why don't we say that it's going to be 2 prutos? In other words, all you've proven is that it has to be more than a pruta. But who says it's a dinar? Maybe it's a half a dinar, maybe it's 2 prutas. And the Gemara says to that, Kevan da pikse mi pruta, ukma a dinar. Once we say it's not a pruta, once we take away the possibility of pruta, so then we say instead that it's going to be a dinar. And the Gemara continues, Rava Amar Rava says, Hainu time at the Beis Shammai. The reason of Beis Shammai is as follows, a different reason altogether. Why is it that the minimum amount for Kiddushin is a dinar? Shalo Yehu Benos Yisrael kehefker, that the daughters of Israel should not be as though they are hefker. And Rashi says, Palga de dinar vika geiruad pruta. Again, if it would be half a dinar, again, you can deduct until a pruta. All you've proven is that it has to be more than a pruta. And the Gemara said to that, Kevan da pikte mi pruta alma chashivusa boyin. And once you're saying it's not a pruta, it has to be something that's considered important. Ukma a dinar de chashiv. So therefore we establish that it's a dinar, which is chashiv. And then Rava says the reason of Beis Shammai is that the Benos Yisrael shouldn't be like hefker, kehefker, liknos bedavar mu'at, that you're acquiring a girl with such a small amount, and that would be that it's only midrabanan. The after rabbanan l'kiddushin apchusin medina. Essentially, the rabbanan are saying that kiddushin, that less than a dinar, the rabbanan are saying that's not going to be a good kiddushin. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, "Ubeis Hillel omrim bepruta." Beis Hillel say that the minimum amount for kiddushin is a pruta. Sava Rav Yosef lemeimar. Rav Yosef thought to say pruta kaldu. A pruta can be any amount. Rashi explains, Kaldu, Kol Masha Hadorus Meshanim Esamatveya, meaning the generations can change in terms of the coins they use. Pa'amim Shepochsin, Pa'amim Shemosifin Mimishkalam, sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more. The point being, according to Rav Yosef, that the value of the pruta can change over time. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Abai, Abai said to him, V'alo katani, but doesn't it say on there, Kama hi pruta, it says the amount of a pruta. How much is a pruta? Echad mishmona be'isrei talki, it's 1/8 of the Italian isser. And so therefore you see that there is a fixed amount of what a pruta is. And if you're going to say, Hani mili bedorosh al Moshe, maybe that statement was made with regards to the generation of Moshe. But over here we go by how people evaluate what they consider to be a pruta. But when Rav Dimi came, he said, Shia Rav Simoy bedora, that Rav Simoy in his generation, he measured. Kama hi pruta, how much is a pruta? Echad mishmona bi isrei talki. Again, it's 1/8 of the Italian isser. And when Ravin came, he said that Rabbi Dustoi said, Rav Yana, Rav Oshia, and the Rav Yana and Rav Oshia, they also said, Shiaro Kama have a pruta. How much is a pruta? Echad mishisha be'isrei talki. It's 1/6 of the Italian isser. And Rashi explains, Shia Reb Simai estimated Maisa Balafanov, there was an incident in front of him, there was a woman who received the Kiddushin of a pruta, and he said it has to be worth 1/8 of an isser, he nullified the Kiddushin, it wasn't worth that much. And the other opinion was Echad Mishisha, 1/6 of the Italian isser, Lakamon Mefarish Pluksayo. Further on, they're going to explain what the machlokas is over here, whether 1/8 or 1/6. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said back to Abaya, Ihachi, if so, if you're going to say there's a fixed amount for a pruta, and it's 1/8 of the Italian isser, Hainu de Tanina, is that what we learned in the Torah's Kohanim? Is that consistent? It says in the Torah's Kohanim, Tzei v'chashov kama prutos b'shnei sloim. It says calculate how many prutos there are in 2 sela. Yoser me'alpaim, there's more than 2,000. Now, if you're going to say that the pruta is 1/8 of the Italian isser, hashta alpaim lohavin, that means to say that a pruta is actually worth a lot. You don't even have 2,000. Yeser me'alpaim karlu, he's calling it, he's referring to more than 2,000 prutas in 2 slime. That wouldn't be true if the pruta would be worth 1/8 of the Italian isser. Amar Lu Ahusaba, so a certain elder said to them, Anoa Tanina La Karov Le'alpayim, but I don't have the girsa in the Torah's Kohanim that there's more than 2,000 prutos in Shnei Slime. I have that it's close to 2,000 prutos, and that could be consistent with 1/8 of an Italian isser. But the Gemara says it's not consistent, sof, but still at the end it's not consistent. Alpha v'chamishmeyo tzlasin v'shisahu dahavin. It's only going to come out to 1,536. That's not close to 2,000. But the Gemara says, no, that could be considered close to 2,000. Kevan de nafkalumi palga, once you've already gotten past 1,500, meaning you're halfway to 2,000, karov lalpayim karile. They call that close to 2,000. So that's how you can reconcile the Torah's Kohanim with the idea that a pruta is 1/8 of an Italian isser. And Rashi explains, Zamarle Rav Yosef le Abaya. Rav Yosef said to Abaya, Ihachi dein pruta pchusa mikan. If you're going to say that a pruta is not less than that amount, meaning 1/8 of the Italian isser, Hainu detanina shani shona b'Toras Kohanim. That's what I learned in Toras Kohanim. Tzevach hashov. Go and calculate. And again, if you're going to say it's worth so much, hashtoim hu echad mishmona b'Isrei Talki. If it's 1/8 of the Isrei Talki, alpayim prutos lo have. It's not even going to be 2,000 b'shnei slaim. You're not even going to have 2,000 prutos in shnei slaim. Kedefarishas b'samach, as we'll explain in a moment. Yoser me alpayim karilu. We're going to call that more than 2,000. And Rashi says, Mishnah zu shnuya eitzel nenem min hektish. This Mishnah is taught by someone who derives benefit from hektish. Shemevi al hanoyas pruta osham bekesef shkolim. He has to bring because he derived hanav a pruta. He has to bring an osham. Tzevach hashov le'sarachik min ha'aver, and go and calculate to distance oneself from avera. You should do a calculation to see how serious it is. She'af al hashogeg tzorech kapara gedola kagonzu. That even on a shogeg you need a great kapara like this. Amar le'Yehusa, but then a certain elder said, Toa atabi Mishnah zu, you're making a mistake in this Mishnah. Da'anot taninala, because the way I taught it is v'karov la'alpayim taninala. It doesn't mean more than 2,000. It means there are close to 2,000 prutas in two sela. And Rashi continues and explains the calculation. Alpha v'chamesh meo to losin v'shisa havin. It should come out to 1,536 prutas in the two sellas. Shahasela dala dinarim, because a sela is 4 dinar. V'hadinar chav dala isarim, and a dinar is 24 iser. Kedel kamon, as we'll say later on, v'i iser shmona prutas. And if you're going to say within the iser is 8 prutas, as we're saying, liolam nimtzu kuf tzadi beis prutas b'dinar, it's going to come out that there are 192 prutos in a dinar. V'hashmona dinar sheb'shtei slime, so the 8 dinar in 2 slime, you have to take that 192 and you multiply it by 8. Olam kol echad masayim prutos chaser shmona. Again, each one is going to be 192. Rashi refers to that as 200 prutos minus 8. That's the 192. And again, so you're going to take that and you're going to multiply that by 8. Harei elef v'taf kuf lamed vav. That's going to come out to 1,536. And then the Gemara said, Kevan de nafka elef hasheni mechetzio shloshim v'shisha karav l'alpayim karele. Since again you passed 1,500, so that's already considered to be close to 2,000. And the Gemara continues, Gufa, returning to what we said above, Ki Aser Rav Dimi Yamar, when Rav Dimi came, he said, Shir Rav Simoy Bidoro, the Rav Simoy estimated in his generation, Kama hi pruta, how much is a pruta? Echad mishmona b'Isra Talki, it's 1/8 of an Italian Isra. The Chi Aser Ravin Amar, and when Ravin came, he said, Shir Rav Dustoy, Rav Yanev, Rav Oshia, Rav Dustoy, and Rav Yanev, and Rav Oshia, they estimated, Kama hi pruta, how much is a pruta? Echad mishisha b'Isra Talki, it's 1/6 of the Italian Isra. And the Gemara says, Amar le Abai le Rav Dimi. So Abai said to Rav Dimi, Nema at v'Ravin, bepluksa dehane tanoi kamif legisu. Let us say that you and Ravin are arguing in the same machlokas tanoim that we find in terms of whether it's 1/8 or whether it's 1/6. It's the same as the following brisa. The Tanyas we learned in a brisa, pruta she'amru chachamim, the pruta that the chachamim spoke about, echad mishmona be'isrei talki. Again, it's 1/8 of the Italian isser. And the Brisa continues breaking down the various denominations. Sheish ma kesef dinar, 6 silver ma is a dinar. Ma shnei pundiyonin, 1 ma is 2 pundiyon. Pundiyon shnei saran, 1 pundiyon is 2 isser. Isser shnei musmisim, 1 isser is 2 mismes. Mismes shtei kuntrunkin, 1 mismes is 2 kuntrunkin. And kuntruk shtei prutos, 1 kuntruk is 2 prutos. Nimtza, so if you do the math, it comes out pruta achas mishmona be'isrei talki. Pruta is 1/8 of the Italian isser. And the Brisa continues, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, Shlosha hadresin l'ma'a, there are 3 hadresin to a ma'a. Shnei hansin l'hadris, there are 2 hansin to a hadris. Shnei shamnin l'hanetz, there are 2 shamnin to a henetz. Beis prutos l'shamin, there are 2 prutos to a shamin. And nimsa, turns out if you do the math, pruta achas mishisha be'isrei talki. A pruta is 1/6 of the Italian isser. And so the Gemara says, Leima demar amar katanakama. Let us say that the master follows the Tanakama again, that it's 1/8. But Ravin damar Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, and Ravin says like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel that it's 1/6. And the Gemara says, Amar le, he said back to him, Bein didi uvein Ravin, whether you're following me, whether you're following Ravin, aliba the Tanakama, could all follow the Tanakama, even though Ravin seems to say the same thing as Rav Shimon ben Gamliel of 1/6, but really he could follow the Tanakama as well. Velokash, it's not difficult. Hadi yakari surei, hadi zuli surei. In one case, we're talking about a situation where the Isurim go up in value. In one case, the Isurim go down in value. Hadi yakari surei, when the Isurim are up in value, kum esrim v'arba bezuzah. So then you're talking about 24 of them for a zuz. Hadazula, when they go down in value, kum tlasun utrain bezuzah. So then there are 32 of them for a zuz. And Rashi explains, Pundiyonin, Isorin, Mismesim, Kontrunkin, Minimatbos, these are all different kinds of coins, Kitano, Zumizu, one smaller than the next. V'chein Hadresin, Hinsin, Shamnin, the same thing with the Hadresin and the Hinsin and the Shamnin. Nimses, Pruta, Echon, Mishisha, again the opinion was, the second opinion, Rav Shimon Gamliel is 1/6. Sho Isser, Echon, Michav, Dalid, Bedino, Kiddush, because the Isser again is 1/24 of a dinar, as you said. Avol ha-prutos gedolos mimasha amr, but the prutos are bigger from what you said. Shahadinor sheishma, because the dinner is 6 ma. V'hamoa gimel hadresim, the ma is 3 hadresim. Hare yurches hadresim ledinor, that's 18 hadresim for a dinner. V'hem shloshim v'sheish hansen, that comes out to 36 hansen. V'hem shivim u'shnayim shemenin, and that comes out to 72 shmenim. V'hem kuf mem dalet prutos, that comes out to 144 prutos. Chilkam l'chav dalet chalokim timsa shisha b'chol chelik. If you divide it up to 24 portions, it comes out 6 for every portion. Hare sheish prutos l'isser, that comes out to 6 prutos for an isser. Shu echad michav dalet b'dinar, which is 1/24 of a dinar. And so then he responded, Aliba the Tanakama, the Hainu Kestam Masnisan. The Tanakama is like the Stam Mishnah. V'ach the Ravin Lav Shosifu ala Prutos. And what Ravin said, it's not that they added onto the Prutos. Everyone can follow the Tanakama. Eloha Isurin Huzlo, what happened was the Isurin went down in value. V'yamdu Shloshim Ushtayim b'dinar. It turned out now that it was 32 of them in a dinar. B'yameim in their days. Uliolam Kuf Tzadi Beis Prutos b'dinar. But really it's always 192 Prutos in a dinar. Chashav Vav Pa'amim Shloshim Ushtayim. If you have 6 times the 32, it's going to come out to 192. But in the days of Rabbi Simoi, so then the Yisarim were expensive in the normal fashion. Chavdalid b'dinar, there were 24 in a dinar as opposed to 32. So then it came out according to that math that the pruta, which was 192 to a dinar, was 1/8 of an isser, not 1/6 of an isser. And the Gemara continues, Amar Shmuel, Shmuel says, Kitsha b'tmar, let's say he's Mekadesh, a woman with a date, Afilu omed kur tamar and bedinor, or even if you can get a core of dates for a dinar, meaning a date is worth much less than a pruta, Mekudeshes, it's still going to be a good kiddushin, Chayshinan shemashava pruta b'madai, because we're concerned, maybe in madai it's worth a pruta, even though here it's not worth a pruta, maybe somewhere else it's worth a pruta. But the Gemara says, V'anon tanan, but didn't we learn our Mishnah? Beis Hillel omrim b'pruta v'shava pruta. Beis Hillel say the minimum amount is a pruta or something worth a pruta. If it's less than that, it's not a kiddushin. So how can Shmuel say that it is a kiddushin? And the Gemara says, Lo kash, it's not difficult. Ha b'kiddushay v'adai, ha b'kiddushay safek. In one case, we're talking about the fact that if it's not a shava pruta, so then it's not a kiddushay v'adai. It's not certainly a kiddushin, but it still might be a kiddushay safek, meaning there still might be a safek over here that it should be considered to be a good kiddushin. And Rashi explains, Habe Kiddushay Vadei Mieshno Shava Pruta B'Mekomo Have a Kiddushin Vadei. If it's worth a Pruta in the location where the Kiddushin took place, that is certainly a Kiddushin. If someone else would try to be Mekadesh or after, she's mutter to the first one. She doesn't need to get from the second person. It's certainly a good Kiddushin. Now, if it's not worth a Pruta in the place where the Kiddushin took place, so it's not a certain Kiddushin, it wouldn't be Mavatal a second Kiddushin, Aval Kiddushay Safek have it, but it would be a Kiddushin out of Safek. Ve'ena Mutaris La'acher below get. She wouldn't be permitted to somebody else without a get. To Chayshinon Shema Shava Pruta b'Madai, because we're afraid maybe in Madai it really is worth a Pruta, and therefore it might be a good Kiddushin. And the Gemara continues, Hahu Gavra da'akdish bezavda de'ordi. There was an individual who was Mekadesh, a woman with a bundle of rags. Yosef Rav Shimi Bar Chia kame de Rav. Rav Shimi Bar Chia sat in front of Rav. Kama'ayin, but he was inspecting it. He ispa shava pruta in. Ilolo, if it was worth a shava pruta, then it is a kiddushin. If not, it's not a good kiddushin. But the Gemara says, V'ilespa shava pruta lo, but is that really true that if it's not a shava pruta, it's not a kiddushin? V'amar Shmuel Chayshin, and didn't we just say above that Shmuel said that we're concerned for kiddushin because we're concerned it might be worth a pruta somewhere else? And the Gemara says along the same lines as before, Lokash, it's not difficult, Ha b'kiddushay vadai, Ha b'kiddushay safek. In one case we're talking about kiddushin for certain, in the other case we're talking about a situation of being concerned, it's a safek, yes, maybe it's a kiddushin. He wanted to know if it was a kiddushay vadai or not, that's why he was measuring if it was a pruta. And the Gemara continues, how Gavr da'akdish ba'avna dekuchla, there was an individual who was Mekadesh, a woman with a blue marble stone, And again, the Gemara continues, Yosef Rav Chisda v'kameshayr le. Rav Chisda said he was estimating it, isbe shava pruta in v'lo lo. If it was worth a pruta, yes, it's a Kiddushin, if not, not. And again, the Gemara asks, v'les be shava pruta lo, but if it's not a shava pruta, it's not. V'amar Shmuel, didn't Shmuel say chashinan that we should be concerned? And the Gemara says to that, Rav Chisda lo savar le de Shmuel. Rav Chisda did not hold like what Shmuel said. Rav Chisda said that if it's not worth a pruta in this location, it's not a Kiddushin at all. But the Gemara continues, Amr le'ime, but the mother said to him, meaning the mother of the individual who's Mekadesh, said to Rav Chisda, V'ahu yoma dekitcha, but on that day which he gave the stone as a Kiddushin, Hava be shava pruta, it actually was worth a shava pruta. And Rashi says, Hahu yoma b'yom shekitcha, Hava b'shava pruta, v'achshav huzla. On the day of the Kiddushin, it actually was worth a shava pruta, and now it just went down in value. Amar lo, so he said back to her, Lav kol kaminach da'asrat la basra. The case over here was that someone else came and was Mekadesh, the same woman, and so now he says to the mother of the first man, you are not able to now answer her on the later person. Once we see that it's not worth a pruta right now, we can't say that at the time of the Kiddushin it was worth a pruta. We see it's not worth a pruta, therefore his Kiddushin was not good, and the second Kiddushin was in fact good. You can't prohibit her on the second man. Rashi says, Lav kol kaminach lohoyed sharishon Kiddushin v'osarta basra. You can't testify now that it was at a different time, it was worth a pruta, and therefore the first one was a Kiddushin. You're trying to ask her on the second man. That you cannot do. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis.